And now in this displacing or defocusing awareness through oneness, there's a couple different ways to look at it or to go about it. There's merging with, and this is kind of aligned, but not aligned with, but also distinct from this traditional practice, yogic practice of Patanjali. But merging with is, the emphasis is different. So what you're doing is you're looking at an object, any object, and what you're trying to do is not just look at the object, not just to achieve this whole practice of samyama in the yogic tradition of concentration, contemplation, and absorption, but instead what you're doing is you're bypassing all of that. Because what you're not trying to do is a mental practice, you're trying to do an awareness practice, or a practice of oneness. What you're trying to do is get behind the object. So in other words, you're trying to bring your awareness to, rather than focusing on that object, you're trying to bring your awareness to the point behind that object in order to perceive the underlying oneness. So that's merging with. When you're going between is similar to this, but the emphasis again is a little bit different. You're taking self and other, say your own life and some other life, say as an example, or your own life and some object, and you're focusing your awareness not on either of those objects, yourself or the other, but the space between them. And that is another way to realize oneness. Then you have, that's going between. Then you have getting behind. Getting behind is essentially what you're doing is you're not really, I mean, you could say you're going backward with your awareness, but I don't know if that's really true. What you're doing is you are looking at another being in yourself or your environment and your own body, your own life, and you're taking your awareness and you're putting it all the way back behind your life. And if you put it back behind your life, in other words, if you position your awareness completely behind or outside or beside or beneath or however you want to term it, your own psyche and your own body, what will happen is you will come directly to this underlying perception of oneness. Now, I want to talk about other people's methods of oneness. And the real primary methodology comes back, as I noted, to Patanjali, the Yoga Sutras. I'm not saying that that's where it started, but that's where it was codified and really spelled out into a very clear methodology. The problem with Patanjali's Yoga Sutras is not the basic approach of samyama. In a certain sense, the problem, as I said, is emphasis. So if you take an object and you concentrate on it, then you contemplate it and you come to absorption, it's still a mental practice. And that's a very important point of distinction. Until you take your awareness and you displace it or defocus it from any object, all objects, your own psyche, your own body, and any object of focus, you're not going to come to enlightened awareness. So this is very important. If this emphasis is retained, then samyama can be utilized as a method, as a pathway to enlightenment. And what that means is you look at an object, and instead of focusing on the object, you focus on what is behind the object or beneath it, or the awareness underlying the object. When you do that, or the oneness underlying self and other beneath the objects, or the space that includes all objects, when you do that, then with that emphasis, if you do samyama with that emphasis, focusing on an object with the emphasis of getting to the awareness, oneness, and space underlying or beneath or behind the object, then you can come directly to enlightened awareness. But the object is not the point. Awareness, space, and oneness is the point. This also applies with methods of vipassana and mindfulness, which again, these are methods of focusing on objects. Another point I wanted to mention as an aside is I was just looking at the Buddhist Noble Eightfold Path, and I noticed that all of those practices were practices based on focusing. They're all practices based on focusing awareness, and they're all mental practices, by and large. I mean, with some exceptions, like right livelihood and so on. So what's interesting is that that's not the correct methodology for enlightenment. It may be a good way to conduct your life, but it is not a correct way to come to enlightenment. Again, focusing is not the way. It doesn't matter if you do it, you keep it to the bare bones and you do it the yogic way through mantras, candle flames, whatever, or you do it this fleshed out, developed Buddhist kind of way of the Noble Eightfold Path. All of these focusing practices will not bring you to enlightenment and self-realization unless you have the correct emphasis. So if you're doing vipassana or mindfulness, again, there's nothing. It's good to do mindfulness and even vipassana, but your emphasis is not the objects, but the awareness, space, and oneness underlying, preceding, beneath them. And if you have the correct emphasis, these can be viable pathways to oneness. So the main thing is don't get caught up in objects in any form. Doesn't matter if the object is something you see through your senses. It doesn't matter if the object is your body. It doesn't matter if the object is any kind of psychic object. When you get fixated on objects, either through samyama, or fixated on objects through mindfulness, or fixated on objects through vipassana, your emphasis is incorrect, and you will take yourself subtly away from enlightened, awakened awareness rather than towards it. However, if you do samyama, concentration, contemplation, and absorption, and you do vipassana and you do mindfulness with the correct emphasis, which is emphasizing the oneness underlying the objects, the space within which objects arise, and or the awareness that's underlying the objects, you see, then you're doing the practice correctly. So this is about it. That's about all I have to say. I think I've said everything that I can say on any kind of spiritual teaching model or methodology. I've elaborated defocusing, displacing awareness as much as I can, and the whole thing of questioning processes, experiential language processes, methodology through awareness, space, oneness. I mean, I think I've covered everything, and this is just to kind of add some detail to and kind of a sense of finality to all the other videos that I've put and everything else that I've written, just to say, look, this is it. This is, when I say this is an enlightenment methodology, I'm also saying this is the enlightenment methodology. And the basic principle, the basic theory is one of defocusing or displacing awareness, and you're doing so through awareness, space, or oneness, and you're applying some kind of questioning process, some sort of language process, an experiential language or language of enlightenment, or some specific methodology. And that's it. This is it. If you practice, if you take the time to understand what has been spelled out in these videos and on my blog, and you take the time to apply the methods, you will come directly to oneness, space, and awareness, and you will come directly to self-realization, awakening, enlightenment, and the intrinsic, inherent, innate, immediate bliss, joyous bliss, expansive love, and just real peace. Not the peace of, I slept for a little while, now I feel a little peaceful, or I had a calm after or before the storm, but true peace, true bliss, true joy, true love. And so this is it. This is the way to approach it, and you will get results, and, it's free. So, this is a kind of methodology that people have been trying to clarify for thousands of years and communicate for thousands of years. And now it's clarified, and it's being communicated through the internet. So avail yourself of it, and make the best of it. So thanks.